before we talk about the saws, the drills, and the red-hot iron, we have to start with a single idea that made it all possible. Forget what you know about medicine. The medieval doctor wasn't a healer or a scientist. He was a philosophical butcher, operating on a theory so fundamentally wrong it was more dangerous than any plague. It was called the theory of the four humors. This was the absolute gospel of medicine for 1,500 years. State in your body was a sack of four liquids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. All sickness, from a cough to cancer, was caused by one thing only: an imbalance. Do you have a fever and a flushed face? Clearly, an excess of blood. Are you pale and coughing? An overabundance of phlegm? Your doctor wasn't trying to cure your disease. He had no concept of germs. He was a glorified plumber, trying to drain a tank, and you were the tank. This insane idea gave doctors a license to kill, because if the problem was too much of something, the cure was simple. They just had to get it out of you. The most common solution was bloodletting. This wasn't a last resort. It was the immediate cure for nearly every ailment. Doctors would use an unwashed lancet to slice open a vein, or apply dozens of slimy leeches all over your body, even on the genitals. But it gets so much worse. They would drain a patient until they fainted, believing unconsciousness was a sign of success. This created the ultimate no-win scenario. You didn't just have to survive your illness. You had to survive your doctor, who was determined to kill you with a cure. If training wasn't enough, the barber-surgeon was called. There was no anesthesia. There was no sterile theater. Surgery was a public spectacle of butchery, and you were wide awake for every second. Imagine being held down, screaming as a saw grinds through your muscle and bone. But wait, it gets indescribably worse. To stop the bleeding from the amputation, they'd take a red-hot iron poker and press it into your open wound. You could smell your own flesh charring. This horrifying act, called cauterization, created the perfect breeding ground for internal ailments. You were better off drinking from a sewer. The apothecary's cures were a cocktail of poisons like mercury and lead, filth like animal dung and urine, and bizarre ingredients like powdered mummy or moss scraped from a dead man's skull. You are forced to consume the most disgusting substances imaginable, all in the name of health. And what about a sickness of the mind, like epilepsy or depression? The diagnosis was simple. You were possessed. The doctor's solution was trepanation. He would take a crude, hand-cranked drill and bore a hole in your skull while you were fully conscious, hoping to let the evil spirit escape. He would peer into the bloody opening, searching for a puff of smoke, convinced he was at war with Satan himself. Nowhere was this terror more apparent than in childbirth. A male doctor was only summoned when things went catastrophically wrong, and his unwashed hands often introduced a fatal childbed fever. If the baby was stuck, he brought tools of destruction, sharp hooks, to tear the child out. If that failed, he would perform an embryotomy, using knives and crushing instruments to dismember the baby inside the womb so it could be removed in pieces. When a woman in labor heard the doctor's footsteps, she wasn't praying for a miracle. She was praying for a quick end. Even if you survived the treatment, your reward was a permanent hell. Every wound was an invitation for gangrene to rot your body while you were still breathing. A healed stump was a gnarled club of burned tissue firing off bolts of phantom pain for life. You didn't just carry the physical scars. You carried the memory of being consciously dismembered, trapped in a prison of chronic pain. you had traded a temporary problem for a lifelong catastrophe. All this was but a dress rehearsal for medicine's greatest failure, the Black Death. Faced with a tidal wave of death, all their theories collapsed. They fell back on what they knew, performing bloodlettings that hastened death and lancing open plague sores, which only spread the infectious fluid faster. Out of this chaos, the plague doctor was born an icon of terror, not hope. His famous beak mask was just an air freshener stuffed with herbs to block the bad air. His purpose was not to cure. It was to count the dead, using his long stick to keep victims at a distance. And by moving from one sick house to the next, the doctor himself became one of the most efficient vectors of the disease. He was the angel of death. The Black Death exposed the truth. The medieval doctor was never the hero of the story. He was the final, most terrifying symptom, the ultimate proof that the cure was and always had been the most dangerous disease of all. If these horrifying truths about medical history made you grateful for modern science, maybe hit that subscribe button, because the past is filled with so-called cures and wisdom that were far more monstrous than any disease. And trust me, you haven't heard anything yet.